Boris Johnson could be refusing demands to extend the Brexit transition period to ensure the coronavirus lockdown is maintained for as long as necessary, political analyst Anand Menon suggested. Boris Johnson has so far rejected any suggestion the British government may request an extension of the Brexit transition period past December 2020. Mr Johnson insisted the UK is ready to completely change trade relations with the European Union if an agreement is not reached in time despite the economic pressure sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. UK in a Changing Europe director Anand Menon suggested the hard line the Prime Minister has adopted on Brexit could be influenced by his desire to keep the country in lockdown for as long as is needed to avoid a resurgence of the coronavirus. Speaking to the Reuters Institute, Professor Menon said, "This isn't a cabinet that wields collective cabinet responsibility. This is a cabinet that is dominated by the Prime Minister. This cabinet, I'm pretty sure, will do what the Prime Minister will tell them to do because he is the person who got them their majority, who kept them in their seats." That being said, there's an interesting coalition of backbench Conservative MPs, which happens to overlap quite a lot with some of the hard Brexiteers. People like Steve Baker, Owen Paterson, Ian Duncan Smith, who are now calling for a fast end of the lockdown. Both Mr. Baker and Mr. Duncan Smith have urged the government to ease restrictions in the coming days to allow businesses to reopen and the economy to restart. But Professor Menon suggested the Prime Minister may be offering the vociferous group of backbench MPs demanding normal life resume some concessions on Brexit to keep the lockdown in place. He continued, "It crosses my mind that refusing to end transition might be the price Boris Johnson pays to be able to hold the line on keeping the lockdown going for longer. I wonder, if the Prime Minister is serious about keeping the lockdown going for longer than they would like, the concession is to say, we'll get the transition out of the way." While a hard Brexit is expected to have some economic repercussions on the UK due to the potential reintroduction of tariffs and duties on goods traded with the EU, the coronavirus pandemic already had serious effects on the British economy. Over 6 million people have applied to the furlough job retention scheme Chancellor Rishi Sunak launched in March and have been receiving up to 80% of their wages from the government. The EU and the UK have continued to show signs of divergence on major issues, including the highly contended fishing rights the EU want to continue having over British waters once the UK has quit the bloc. But despite the apparent differences between the negotiating parties, Environment Secretary George Eustice on Friday once again reiterated the government's commitment to see trade talks concluded by December. Speaking at the daily Downing Street briefing, Mr Eustice said, "We're still going ahead with Brexit. Brexit, in fact, it is something that has already happened. We left the European Union at the end of January. We have a transition period that ends at the end of this year, and we will still be ending that transition period on time as planned. And we are still doing whatever planning is necessary to ensure that after that transition period we can trade normally and function normally as a country."